Yoga practice sequences often involve a hybrid type of practice, meaning there's a wide variety of poses that are done. And other times the sequence is set up to focus on particular actions that are required for a pinnacle pose. And in this practice, we'll be working on a pinnacle pose, and that is full wheel pose. After an accident that occurred 5 years ago, I thought I'd never be able to do this pose again because there are so many aspects to this pose that have been compromised in my body. When you work on a pinnacle pose, there are many different aspects, and perhaps you've got some areas that you're still working on creating more opening, more flexibility, more mobility. In full wheel pose, there's so many pieces. Your legs, your knees, the tops of the thighs, the length from the pubic bone all the way to the sternum, and shoulder movement, and wrists. There's so many pieces that you have to work on. So let's work on those pieces leading up to a full wheel. If you get to the full wheel, that's a bonus, but if not, that describes more than anything what yoga is all about. Just an exploration. For this practice, I've got a blanket and I've got weights and blocks. You don't need these for your practice, but sometimes they're useful in going to the full pose. We'll start seated. Sit with your feet about hip distance apart and take your hands to the back side of the legs. Pull the heels in toward the pelvis and notice how the hamstrings get fired up. Pulling the heels in toward the pelvis engages the back sides of the legs and creates an energetic quality all the way from the toes to the pelvis. So keep that action, keep that awareness of the back side of the leg. Now let's focus on the front side of the leg. Virasana is a seated pose that gives you a nice stretch for the front side of the leg. Now for some of us, this is quite challenging. So you might want to get a block, sit on that block, and notice how you can get a little bit more length in the pose. So we're working from the toes to the pelvis to just bring awareness to parts of the body that will need to engage more fully in a practice leading toward the pinnacle pose of a full wheel. From here, come to a tabletop position. From tabletop, step your right foot forward. Draw your pelvis down. We'll get a nice stretch to the front side of the left thigh as you come a little bit deeper into the pose. It's of course your choice, but if you'd like to go a little bit deeper, lifting up the back foot will give you a bit more of a stretch. So see if you can lift up the back foot, and if that works for you, then maybe you can even hold on to the back foot, just to allow a nice stretch to both the inner groin muscle and the top of the thigh. Release your foot down and come to the opposite side. I'm feeling like I really could have used a little padding for the knee on the back leg. So if that's the case with you, grab your blanket for that padding. From all fours position, step your left foot forward. Take your hands right above the knee and draw it down. And just feel a nice lengthening quality from the knee all the way to the pelvis. Take your hands to the floor so that you can see if you can lift up this foot. And if so, maybe even hold on to this foot for another thigh stretch here. Just go a little bit deeper into the pose. and you can release out of this. We're checking all aspects here of the pose. As we go up the leg, we want to make sure our hips are nice and open. And one way to do that is to start at one end of the mat with your feet as wide apart as the mat is. And place your hands right in front of your heart. Move your knees over to one side and come to a full twist. Turn your heart to that side as well. Come back to center and drop over to the opposite side and lift up. So you're moving the sits bones as you turn to one side and the other. You're not waddling side to side, but you're doing a nice full twist as you slowly move up toward the front of the mat. You've got the full length to walk your hips to the front of the mat. Enjoy a nice fullness to the breath, nice engagement of the legs. And when you come to the front of the mat, let's come back to all fours position. From all fours position, tuck your toes under. Place your hands nice and wide apart. Draw your shoulders forward. Draw your heart down toward the mat. Now take the thighs to the mat. Come up to the fingertip tops and rise up. To get strength in the back muscles, just pulse a few moments here. Pulse a few cycles. As you inhale, you lift up. As you exhale, you soften down. As you inhale, you rise up. As you exhale, you soften. Now bend your knees so you just get a bit of a thigh stretch. As you inhale, just keep the action going here. As you exhale, you soften. Inhale, exhale. Now free your hands, reach your hands back, and inhale, lift up. Exhale, soften. Inhale, lift up. Exhale, soften. Reach your right arm forward. Release your right leg down. Now roll over and catch hold of the left foot and just reach it back so that you get a nice thigh stretch here. Maybe you can lie all the way back as you reach from the pelvis to your knee. You get a nice stretch on the front side of the thigh. Now roll back over, come back to your belly. Reach your left arm forward. Bend your right knee. Roll over. Find your right foot or shin and roll to your back. Reach from the right hip all the way to the knee. And just notice if one feels a little tighter than the other. Come back now to roll over gently on your belly. And release out of the pose. Lie on your back with your knees bent. We'll continue to work on opening the hips. So just take your right ankle to the outer left knee. Use your hands to press the top of the thigh back. Draw your left thigh in. Interlace your fingers right at the belly of the hamstrings and reach your right knee just a little bit further away. So it's a very active right leg. Release your left foot and your right. Take your left ankle to the outer right knee. Stack your hands and just press the left thigh back away from your heart. Just have a nice evenness to the in-breath and the out-breath. Nice engagement of the left leg. Now draw your right thigh closer to your right ribs. Continue to reach the left thigh away from your left ribs. Both legs stay very active in this action. Release your foot down. Release your left foot. Take your right ankle to the outer left knee again. Press your elbows down. Lift your pelvis up and continue to get this nice length on the front side of the body as you draw from the hip to the knee to get more length there. Draw the pelvis down just slightly. Before lifting it up again, reach from the pelvis to the knee. Release down. One more. Inhale, lift up. Exhale, draw down. Release your right foot to the mat. Take your left ankle to the outer right knee. Pull in, like we were doing at the first part of the practice, from the heel to the pelvis. So you engage the back side of the leg. As you lift up, try to keep that engagement. Right heel pulling in toward your heart. Now exhale, draw down. Inhale, lift up. Exhale, draw down. Inhale, lift up. Exhale, draw down. Release your foot. Find either a blanket or some blocks, and let's get a nice passive opening of the upper chest area. If you've got blocks, you can have one block to be right under the sternum, and the other block you can use as a pillow or not. Just depends on how flexible you are. Find now, it's a little tricky to find that point just at the base of the shoulders to allow yourself to come to a nice back bending posture to help open the shoulder area. You can take your feet in baddha konasana with the feet in a prayer position. Maybe even take your arms in a cactus pose if that works for you, to create just a little bit more opening in the upper chest area. If that doesn't work for you, please modify. And as you come to a nice resting pose here, if you find that this is a little bit too much of a stretch for you, and maybe it's time to take it down and just lie over a rolled blanket. Make sure your rolled blanket is quite tight, or maybe a rolled sticky mat. But just stay in the pose in such a way that you're able to create this feeling of elongation of the front side of the body, and a bit of an opening here with the arms in flexion. Invite nice ease in your breath. Engagement. An engagement both of the feet, the legs, an engagement in the action of the breath. So we did some actions where our shoulders were in extension, and now in this, where our arms are over our head to prepare for a full wheel pose, we're able to just get a little bit more elongation in those muscles that support this movement toward a back bend. Take 5 more full breaths in this pose. Now fold your knees together, roll off the blanket or blocks, remove the blocks or blanket, and lie back. Just notice the difference. The upper chest feels so much more open. Now bend your knees. Plant your feet. Place the blocks now underneath your pelvis. If you don't have blocks, then improvise with books or a blanket. It's got this nice fullness in the chest. Take your arms up and over. Maybe even come to the form of the full wheel. So the hands are not weight bearing. You're just giving the wrists an opportunity to adjust here. Come to a semblance of the form of the pose. Now relax your arms and just stay in this supported bridge pose. Remove your blocks or blankets. Come to take the pelvis to the mat. And now that we've done each of the pieces of the pose, let's see how we do. As we come toward the pinnacle pose, one of the complaints that people have about this pose is that their wrist hurts so bad. And of course, a big part of that is enabling the shoulders to open so nicely. If that's the case with you, you may want to use a prop and be against the wall. I'll give you links about how to do that. You can use blocks or you can use a roll blanket or towel. For this practice, I'm going to use weights because you can grip onto them and you'll avoid overextending your wrists. I'm using 10-pound weights, so if you have those, you might want to try them out. Or come to the wall with your blanket and blocks. For the full pose, take your hands over your head, press your hands down with your feet about hip distance apart, or maybe even wider for some of us. Lift your pelvis up to come to the first stage of the pose. Lift your shoulders up to come just with very little weight to the head. So as you come up, you get this nice firmness. You can rise up to come to the full pose if that's available to you, or just stay in that second form. You come down, you bend your knees, and slowly make your way down. You pause. You just kind of notice the shift that's occurred. And you try the pinnacle pose once again. Take your hands over your head. If you're feeling like the hands can go flat without the props, without a blanket or without a block, then feel free to press your hands. Or if you just want the freedom that the prop gives you, use that. Stage 1, you lift up your pelvis. Stage 2, you lift the shoulders up. Stage 3, you rise up. And slowly you come down. And release your hands. And pause. And enjoy your breath. You can release your legs now and just allow yourself to assimilate all the actions that you did, to explore the details of one pose, all the pieces. Allow your legs and your arms to relax. Thank you for joining me in this practice of exploring all the different aspects to get into a full wheel pose and some of the adjustments and refinements we can make with the use of some props. Namaste.